On a quiet, ordinary day on Earth, no one could have predicted what would happen next. The world had been at peace for decades, and life went on as usual for people like Adam. He was a man who lived in a small coastal town, working as a fisherman. His days were spent on the water, casting nets, repairing his boat, and watching the waves roll by. Life was simple, and that's the way he liked it. But everything changed one morning when he heard a strange sound while out at sea. It was a low, rumbling hum, unlike anything he had ever heard before. Adam looked up, squinting against the bright sun, and saw something moving in the sky. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a bird. It was a ship. And it was huge. The ship was unlike any spacecraft Adam had ever imagined. Its sleek silver body reflected the sunlight, and it seemed to defy the very laws of gravity. It hovered silently in the air, its engines glowing faintly. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from the ship, crashing into the sea with an explosion that shook the waters. Adam's heart raced as waves splashed over his boat, nearly capsizing it. In a panic, Adam tried to steady himself in his boat. He was a fisherman, not a soldier or a hero. What could he do against something like that? But something inside him pushed him forward. He had to know what was happening. He had to help. He steered his boat toward the epicenter of the explosion. As he neared the site, Adam could see something strange floating in the water. At first, he thought it was debris from the explosion, but when he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. A woman was drifting in the water, unconscious. She was unlike any human he had ever seen. Her features were sharp, almost fox-like, with long, flowing hair and skin that shimmered with an odd, otherworldly glow. She was struggling to stay afloat, her eyes closed and her body limp. Without hesitation, Adam leapt into the water, ignoring the chill that wrapped around him. He swam toward the woman, his heart pounding in his chest. His hands reached her, and he gently lifted her from the cold water. She was light, but her body felt strange in his arms, as though she was from another world entirely. Adam pulled her onto his boat, breathing heavily. He didn't know who she was or where she had come from, but he couldn't leave her there. She needed help, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he knew he was the one who had to save her. As he looked down at her face, he noticed something even stranger. Her eyes were opening slowly, glowing faintly with a color he couldn't quite describe. It wasn't fear in them. It was something else, something ancient and powerful. Her gaze locked onto his, and for a brief moment, Adam felt a strange, almost magnetic pull, as if she was reading him, understanding him in ways that no human ever could. "Where am I?" she whispered in a voice that was soft but carried an unmistakable authority. Her words were laced with a strange accent, one that Adam didn't recognize. "You're safe now," Adam said, though he wasn't sure how. He wasn't sure what he had just witnessed or who this woman was. But one thing was clear: the world was no longer the same. Something had changed, and it was only the beginning. He couldn't have known it at that moment, but the woman he had just saved wasn't just any ordinary being. She was from a distant planet called Vulpine, and the ship that had crash-landed on Earth was the beginning of an unimaginable war. A war between ancient forces that had been hidden for millennia. And in this war, humanity would play a role they could never have imagined. As Adam looked at the woman, he had no idea that his life was about to take a turn into a strange and dangerous new world. The Earth, once peaceful and quiet, would soon be caught in the middle of an intergalactic conflict. And Adam, the simple fisherman, was now at the heart of it all. Adam watched as the woman, still weak from the cold water, slowly sat up on the boat. Her eyes were wide and alert now, scanning the horizon as if she were searching for something or someone. Her movements were graceful, yet there was a sharpness to her gaze, as though she was constantly aware of everything around her. "Who? Are you?" Adam asked, his voice shaky. It was the question he had been dying to ask ever since he pulled her from the sea. But now that she was awake, it seemed more difficult than ever to find the right words. The woman turned her head slowly to face him. For a moment, her expression softened, and there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated, as though choosing her words carefully. "I am Lyra," she said at last, her voice surprisingly clear despite the foreign accent. "I am from the planet Vulpine. I am not from your world." Adam stared at her, his mind racing. Vulpine? It sounded like a name from a science fiction novel, not something that could be real. Yet here she was, sitting on his boat, speaking as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Vulpine. Adam repeated, trying to process the information. He knew nothing about other planets or alien life. What did it mean? Why was she here? Lyra seemed to sense his confusion. She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto his with a mixture of seriousness and regret. "You must understand," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "My people, my entire world is in danger. The ship that you saw, it was not an accident. We were attacked, and I am the last survivor of my mission." Adam felt a chill run down his spine. Attacked by who? Lyra glanced at the sky above them, as if making sure no one was watching. Then, in a lower voice, she spoke again. "The Zalrith. They are enemies of my people. They have been hunting us for centuries. They destroyed my ship, and now they are coming for Earth." Adam's heart skipped a beat. The Zalrith. Another name that sounded like something from a storybook. But if they were hunting her, and if they were coming for Earth, then it wasn't just a story anymore. Why Earth? Adam asked, his mind reeling. Why us? What do they want? Lyra shook her head, looking down at her hands. "It's not your planet they want. It's your species. You are stronger than you realize, Adam. Humanity has something the Zalrith need, and they will stop at nothing to take it." Adam had no idea what she meant by that. He was just a fisherman. He knew how to catch fish, mend nets, and navigate the coastlines. But now he was suddenly thrust into a galactic conflict between alien species. What could he possibly do? Seeing the doubt in his eyes, Lyra placed a hand on his arm. Her touch warmed despite the cold of the sea. "I know this is difficult to understand, but there is no time to explain everything right now. The Zalrith are already coming. They won't stop until they have what they're after." Adam's mind raced, but it wasn't just fear he felt. There was something else, something that drove him forward. Perhaps it was the sense of responsibility that came with saving Lyra, or maybe it was the realization that he was part of something much bigger than himself. "I don't know how to fight a war like this," Adam said, looking out over the water, where the first signs of a storm were gathering. "I'm just a fisherman." Lyra's eyes softened. "You are more than that, Amma. The Zalrith may think you are weak, but you have a power they cannot understand. The strength of humanity is not in your technology or your weapons. It is in your will to fight, your willingness to protect those you care about." For the first time since meeting her, Adam allowed himself to believe in her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe humanity did have something that the Zalrith couldn't grasp: a fierce, unbreakable determination. A loud noise suddenly shattered the moment, a deep, thunderous roar that seemed to come from the sky itself. The water around the boat began to stir violently, as if the storm had arrived early. Adam turned to see a dark shape looming in the distance, moving toward them with frightening speed. Lyra's expression hardened. "They're here." Adam's stomach dropped as he looked at the enormous ship, now visible in the distance. It was like nothing he had ever seen, dark, jagged, and pulsing with energy. It was the Zalrith, and they had come for her. For both of them. "We need to move now," Lyra shouted, her voice urgent. She grabbed Adam's arm and pulled him into action. "We don't have much time." Adam's hands were shaking, but he followed her instinctively, his mind racing with questions. Who were the Zalrith? What did they want with Earth? And what was the mysterious power that humanity had? The one that made them targets? As the boat sped away from the oncoming danger, Adam knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same. He had been drawn into a war that spanned across the stars, and somehow, he was now part of a fight that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. The boat cut through the choppy waves, the engine roaring in protest as Adam tried to steer it away from the dark ship on the horizon. His heart raced in his chest, each thundering beat echoing in his ears. He couldn't fully comprehend what was happening. But one thing was clear. The Zalrath were not just a distant threat, they were here. And they were coming for him, for Lyra and for Earth. Lyra gripped the edge of the boat, her eyes scanning the skies with terrifying focus. The shimmering lights of the approaching Zalrath ship grew brighter, and Adam could feel the air around them growing thicker, heavier, as if the very atmosphere was being pulled toward the massive vessel. He glanced at Lyra, who was watching the ship with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "Do they have weapons?" Adam shouted over the noise of the engine. He was trying to make sense of it all, but it was hard to think straight with the danger so close. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Her face was taut with concentration. Then finally she spoke, her voice low but urgent. "Yes, their weapons are far more advanced than anything on Earth. They can destroy a city in seconds. If they catch us, we're dead." Adam's stomach twisted into knots. He had heard about military power, seen it in the movies, but he had never imagined being up against something so much bigger than anything humans had ever faced. The Zalrath weren't just an enemy, they were a force of nature. Then why don't we just run? Adam asked, his mind trying to process the situation. "Get to land, find help?" Lyra shook her head. "They can track us anywhere. Their technology is too advanced. If we try to outrun them, they'll just catch us again." Adam clenched his jaw, frustration and fear boiling inside him. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't trained for this kind of fight. But then, looking at Lyra's determined face, something inside him hardened. He had no choice now. He had to do something. "We need to find a way to fight back," he said, though he wasn't sure how. But Lyra looked at him with a fire in her eyes, like she was already a step ahead of him. "There's a place," she said quickly, her voice more urgent now. "A hidden base on Earth. It's been there for years, unknown to most of humanity. It's the last hope of resisting the Zalrath. But we must get there before they can stop us." Adam didn't question her. He simply nodded, trusting that this was their best chance. But even as he steered the boat harder toward the rocky coastline, he could feel the pressure building. The Zalrath were getting closer. They could strike at any moment. Suddenly, a sharp, high-pitched whine cut through the air, and a beam of bright light shot out from the Zalrath ship. Adam's eyes widened as the beam sliced through the water just yards ahead of them, narrowly missing the boat. "That's their weapon," Lyra shouted. "They can fire from miles away." Adam swerved the boat sharply to the left, his heart leaping into his throat. The beam struck the water again, this time just to the right of the boat, sending a spray of water high into the air. "Hold on," Adam shouted, pulling the wheel with all his strength. He pushed the boat faster, but the Zalrath ship was moving too quickly. It seemed to anticipate every move Adam made, its weapons locking onto them with deadly precision. Lyra didn't seem scared, but Adam could tell she was focused. She was watching the ship's movements, waiting for something. And then she looked at him and said, "Now." Without hesitation, Adam pulled the throttle to full speed. The boat shot forward, cutting through the waves as if it were a bullet. He could hear the hum of the Zalrath ship's weapons charging up again. His mind raced. He had no plan, no way to fight back. But Lyra's voice echoed in his ears. "Now." Just as the Zalrath fired another beam, Lyra pointed a hand toward the water. Adam didn't understand what she was doing, but then a brilliant pulsing energy field erupted around the boat. The beam hit the field, and instead of destroying them, it scattered off in all directions, like a stone skipping across water. Adam's mouth fell open. What was that? Lyra's gaze never left the Zalrith ship, a defense mechanism. It's something I've been trained to do, but it's not enough to stop them for long. We need to reach the base. The energy field flickered like a dying star, and then vanished. Adam's hands gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles white. He pushed the boat faster, aiming straight for the cliffs ahead. He could see the rocky coastline in the distance, just a little further, but the Zalrith weren't giving up. Another beam shot out, this time wider, aimed at the whole boat. It crashed into the water, the shockwave rocking them hard. The boat lurched violently, throwing Adam to the side. For a moment he lost control of the wheel, and the boat veered off course. Lyra cried out, "No, we need to." But it was too late. The next moment, a series of loud, sharp cracks echoed through the air, and the boat was struck by another blast. Adam felt the hull buckle beneath him as the boat began to sink. "We're going down," he yelled, panicking. His mind spun. What could he do? There was no escape, no way to outrun this monster. But then, as if answering his panic, Lyra reached out, grabbing his arm tightly. "Hold on," she ordered, her eyes flashing with intensity. And in that moment, Adam saw something he hadn't noticed before. Her power wasn't just in her alien abilities. It was in her confidence, in the way she commanded the situation, even when everything seemed lost. The boat was sinking, but Adam's mind cleared. They were going to make it. They had to. "Follow me," Lyra said, and with that, she jumped into the water, pulling him after her. Asterisk, the cold water enveloped Adam as he plunged into it after Lyra. His body tensed, every muscle fighting against the shock of the freezing ocean. But Lyra was already swimming ahead, her movements smooth and swift, almost like she was built for this. Adam struggled to keep up, his mind racing as the dark shadows of the Zalrith ship loomed above, its presence a constant reminder of the deadly chase. The boat was gone now, sinking beneath the waves, but that didn't matter. They were in deeper trouble than just losing their vessel. The Zalrith would never stop hunting them. Adam's heart pounded in his chest, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he could keep going. But then Lyra turned to him, her face serious, but not panicked. "We have to get to the base. It's our only chance. Stay close." Adam nodded, gritting his teeth and pushing himself harder. The water was colder than he had expected, and it felt like his limbs were growing heavier with each stroke. But he couldn't afford to stop. Not now. Lyra led the way, diving under the surface without warning. Adam hesitated for just a second, but he followed her, taking a deep breath and plunging into the dark depths below. The water here was murky, the sunlight barely breaking through to the ocean floor. Adam's eyes strained to see, but he trusted Lyra's lead, knowing she had a plan. They swam deeper and deeper, the sounds of the world above fading away, replaced by the rush of water in Adam's ears. Time seemed to slow as they descended into the unknown. He couldn't see much, but he could feel the pressure of the ocean around him, pushing against his body, making every movement a struggle. He had never been in waters this deep, and the weight of it all made him feel like he was being swallowed by the world. But just when he thought he couldn't go any further, Lyra's hand shot out from the shadows, grabbing his wrist and pulling him toward something. He barely had time to react before they broke the surface of the water again, gasping for air. They were no longer in the open sea. Adam blinked, trying to make sense of his surroundings. They were in an underwater cavern, a hidden pocket of space beneath the ocean's surface. The walls of the cavern were lined with bioluminescent plants, casting a soft glow that lit up the dark water. The air smelled different here, fresher somehow, and Adam could feel the pressure lifting as they swam toward a small, rocky island. In the center of the cavern, Lyra climbed out of the water first, moving with practiced ease. She turned and extended her hand to Adam, helping him onto the rocky shore. He shook off the water, his breath coming in heavy gasps, but the exhaustion was nothing compared to the relief he felt being on solid ground again. "What is this place?" Adam asked, still trying to catch his breath. He looked around, trying to make sense of the strange glowing surroundings. Lyra stepped back, her eyes scanning the area. "This is the hidden base I told you about. It's an ancient refuge for those who fight the Zalrath. It's been here for centuries, but it's known to very few." Adam couldn't believe what he was hearing. An underground base? Hidden for centuries? This was all too much to process. He had gone from a simple fisherman to someone running from alien invaders, swimming through underground caves, and now being told about some secret refuge. None of it seemed real. "Why haven't I ever heard of this?" he asked, his voice incredulous. Lyra turned to face him, her expression serious. "Because it's not meant to be found by people like you. It was built to protect those who would fight against the Zalrath, but only a few know about it. Only a few are chosen to enter." Adam's mind spun with questions, but there wasn't time for answers. They had barely made it this far, and they had no idea how much time they had before the Zalrath came for them again. "We need to move quickly," Lyra said, her tone urgent. "The base has defenses, but they can only hold for so long. We'll have a brief moment of safety here, but we need to prepare. The Zalrath will be here soon, and when they arrive, we need to be ready." Adam followed her, trying to shake off the exhaustion in his limbs. The cavern stretched out before them, its glowing plants lighting the way as they moved deeper into the hidden base. The walls were lined with strange symbols, etched into the rock like some ancient script. Adam had no idea what they meant, but they didn't seem like anything from Earth. "This place is incredible," Adam muttered, his eyes wide with awe. "It's like something out of a story." Lyra gave him a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's real, Adam, and it's our last hope." As they moved deeper into the cavern, Adam began to notice other signs of life-strange machines, glowing terminals, and rows of equipment he couldn't begin to understand. It all seemed like it was from another time, or perhaps another world entirely. Finally, they reached a large chamber in the heart of the cavern. The room was filled with more technology than Adam had ever seen in one place. At its center was a large control panel, covered in strange buttons and lights that flickered with life. Lyra walked up to the console, her fingers flying across the controls. "I need to activate the defense system," she said, her voice calm but focused. "It's the only way to stop the Zalrath from finding us." Adam stood at the doorway of the chamber, his eyes scanning the room. The pressure of what they were facing hit him again. They had barely escaped the Zalrath's grasp, and now they were here, in a place he didn't understand, trying to prepare for a war he never imagined would happen. But as he looked at Lyra, standing in front of the control panel, he felt something shift inside him. She wasn't just an alien, she was a leader. She was fighting for something bigger than herself, and in that moment, Adam realized that he was no longer just a fisherman. He had been pulled into something much bigger than he could have ever imagined, and he wasn't going to back down now. Asterisk. The control room hummed with activity as Lyra's fingers moved deftly over the glowing panels. The strange symbols and alien technology surrounded them, a constant reminder of the world. Adam was now part of a world that seemed impossible only days ago. But now there was no turning back. The Zalrath were coming, and they were the only ones who could stop them. Adam stood by, watching Lyra as she worked. Her brow was furrowed, lips pressed tight with concentration. The base was old, but it had been built for moments like this, moments when the last hope of resistance against the Zalrath depended on those brave enough to fight back. "Is this going to work?" Adam asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The whole situation felt unreal. He was in an underground base, surrounded by alien tech, preparing for an invasion that could destroy Earth. He had always thought of himself as just an ordinary guy. But now he felt like he was part of something much bigger. Lyra didn't look up, but she nodded. The defense systems are the last of their kind. They were designed to repel the Zalrith, but it's been years since they were last used. I can only hope they're still operational. Adam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The Zalrith were relentless, and if Lyra was right, this was their last chance. He didn't know much about the aliens or their weapons, but he knew enough to understand that the stakes were higher than anything he'd ever experienced. "We can't just wait for them to find us," Adam said, pacing nervously. "We need to hit them first, take them by surprise." Lyra finally looked up from the controls, meeting his gaze. There was a flicker of approval in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by something more somber. "That's what I was hoping you would say," she said quietly. "But we're not ready for an all-out assault. The Zalrith are far more powerful than you can imagine." Adam didn't back down. "I know we can't defeat them with force alone. But if we can use the technology here, use what you know, we can strike a blow they won't see coming." Lyra hesitated, considering his words. Then she spoke slowly, almost reluctantly. "There's a way to send the signal. If we can broadcast it through their systems, we might be able to disrupt their communication network. It'll confuse them, give us an edge, but it's risky. We'd need to get close, really close." Adam's heart skipped. "How close?" "Close enough for them to notice us," Lyra said with a small, grim smile. "It's dangerous, but it's the only way to give us a chance." Adam nodded. There wasn't any other choice. He couldn't just sit here and wait to be attacked. He had to do something. "We'll do it," he said firmly. "We'll take the fight to them." Lyra didn't argue. She stood and motioned for him to follow. "Come, we have to get to the communications room. It's the only place with the equipment we need." Adam followed her through the labyrinth of the underground base. The passageways were narrow, the walls lined with strange metal structures that hummed with energy. It was clear that the base was ancient, but its technology was far beyond anything Adam had ever seen. They finally arrived at a large chamber, filled with glowing terminals and a massive central console. The air was thick with tension as Lyra moved to the console, typing in a series of commands that Adam couldn't follow. The room seemed to come alive as the systems powered up, the lights flickering on and off. "Here," Lyra said, gesturing to a control panel. "This will let us send the signal. If we time it right, it should disrupt their fleet's communications. But we have to be fast." Adam nodded, though he wasn't sure if the plan would work. They were taking a huge risk, but it was there. Best shot. As he glanced at the terminal, he noticed a flashing warning light on the screen. The base was being activated, and the Zalrith were closing in. "They're almost here," Adam said, his voice tense. "We don't have much time." Lyra's fingers moved quickly across the controls. "I know," she said, her tone steady. "But we need to prepare for the worst. Once the signal goes out, they'll retaliate. The defense systems will need to be activated as well." Adam felt the weight of her words. This wasn't just about sending a signal. It was about making sure they survived long enough to finish the job. If the Zalrith found them before they could finish their plan, they'd be wiped out in seconds. "We can do this," Adam said, though even he wasn't sure if he believed it. But there was no turning back now. Lyra nodded and stepped back from the console. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes locked on his. There was a quiet strength in her gaze, a strength that made him feel, for the first time since this all began, that maybe they actually stood a chance. "I'm ready," Adam said. Taking a deep breath, without another word, Lyra activated the system. The hum in the room grew louder as the machines powered up, and the lights flickered brighter. A low, ominous whine filled the air, building to a crescendo. Then, with a sharp click, the signal was sent. For a moment, everything went still. Then, The screens on the console flickered, and the warning lights flashed red. Adam's heart pounded as he watched the incoming response from the Zalrith fleet. They had felt the disruption in their communication system. "They know," Lyra said, her voice tight. "They're coming. Prepare yourself." Adam stood straighter, adrenaline surging through his veins. The countdown had begun. There was no more running, no more hiding. They had fought their way this far, and now it was time to finish what they started. Asterisk. The air in the control room was thick with tension. Adam's heart beat in his chest like a war drum, each pulse echoing in his ears. The signal had been sent. The Zalrith fleet had felt the disturbance, and they were coming for them, faster than Adam had ever expected. The lights in the base flickered as the countdown to the final battle began. There was no more hiding, no more waiting. Lyra turned to Adam, her eyes burning with intensity. "We can't hold them off forever. We have one chance. We have to make this count." Adam nodded, though a part of him wanted to argue. One chance? That sounded impossible. But as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he saw the same resolve he had seen in himself when he first jumped into the water to save her. This was no longer just about survival. It was about stopping an invasion that could destroy everything. "Tell me what to do," Adam said, steeling himself for what was coming. Lyra quickly moved to another console, her hands flying over the buttons and screens. "There's an energy core hidden deep in the base. It's designed to power the entire defense system. But if we overload it, if we use it as a weapon, it could destroy the Zalrith ship. At least long enough for us to escape." Adam felt his stomach tighten. Destroy the ship? How? Lyra didn't answer immediately. Her fingers paused for just a moment on the console before she spoke. "It's risky. If we trigger the core at the wrong time, the entire base will implode and will be caught in the blast. But if we time it right, it'll take down their ship. We can't afford to wait." Adam glanced at the large map on the screen, showing the Zalrith ship's trajectory as it hurtled toward the base. They didn't have much time. The Zalrith were close. He turned to Lyra, his mind racing. "Do we have a way to escape if this doesn't work?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though his mind was already leaping ahead, thinking of every possible outcome. Lyra's face softened for a brief moment. "We do, but you may not make it out in time. I won't ask you to take that risk if you're not willing." Adam's jaw clenched, but his eyes never left her. He had already come this far. There was no turning back now. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm. "I'll help you. We do this together." For a second, Lyra just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. "Then follow me. The core is in the central chamber. Stay close." They moved quickly through the winding hallways of the base, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Adam felt the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on him. His mind raced through every possible scenario. But there was no time to think, only to act. They reached the central chamber, a massive space filled with ancient machinery. In the center stood a glowing orb, pulsing with energy. This was it. The energy core. Lyra moved toward it, her hands moving with precision as she inputted a sequence of commands. "We need to overload the core," she said, her voice low and focused. "It will send a surge of energy strong enough to destabilize their ship, but we have to time it perfectly." Adam watched, his pulse racing, as the core began to hum louder. Brighter, the room seemed to vibrate with the energy building around them. Then Lyra looked up, her eyes meeting his. "It's now or never. When I give the signal, you need to trigger the overload. Do you understand?" Adam nodded, his hands trembling slightly. "I understand." The Zalrith ship was nearly on top of them now. He could hear the faint hum of its engines, the rumble of its weapons charging. The base had no more time. It was do or die. Lyra's fingers flew across the console, and then she said, "Now." Adam slammed his hand down on the activation switch. For a moment, everything went still. Then, the ground shook as the core released a massive surge of energy. The entire base seemed to come alive with light, the walls glowing as the energy spiraled out of control. The Zalrith ship above them began to tremble. Adam could see the ship's exterior crack and distort as the energy wave hit it full force. The ship's engine sputtered, and for a brief moment, it looked like the Zalrith were finished, but the victory was short-lived. The ship, though badly damaged, was still alive. Adam could hear the roar of its weapons powering up once more. Lyra cursed under her breath. "It's not enough. We need more time." Adam's heart sank. They had done everything they could. But the Zalrith were relentless. He turned to Lyra, desperation in his eyes. "What now?" Lyra's face was grim. "There's one final measure we can take. But it's dangerous. I'll need you to help me." Before she could finish, the Zalrith ship fired a massive blast. The shockwave sent them both crashing to the ground, and Adam heard the sound of metal groaning. He looked up in time to see the base's ceiling start to collapse, debris falling around them. "Lyra!" Adam shouted, crawling toward her as the floor cracked beneath them. "What do we do?" Lyra reached out, grabbing his arm. "We need to get to the escape pods. Now, without another word, Adam grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the exit. The base was coming apart, and the Zalrith weren't going to stop until they finished what they started. They ran, dodging falling debris and flashing lights, until they reached the escape pods. Lyra hit a button, and the door to one of the pods slid open. They didn't have time to think. "Get in!" Lyra shouted, shoving Adam inside before climbing in herself. The door sealed shut, and the pod shot out of the base, hurtling through the water as the hidden base behind them erupted in a deafening explosion. The Zalrith ship was visible through the small viewport, its outline flickering as the blast tore through it. Adam's breath caught in his throat as he watched the ship break apart, fire and debris scattering in every direction. The battle wasn't over, but they had won this round. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We did it, for now." Adam let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He leaned back in his seat, trying to calm his racing heart. The world had changed, and they had survived. As the escape pod glided toward a safe location, Adam knew that this was just the beginning. The Zalrith would return. But they had shown them that humanity was not to be underestimated. They would fight, and they would win.